In the previous video, we introduced the basics of C programming. Feel free to have a look at this video. In this video, we are going to focus on loops in C. What they are, why they exist, and how they actually work. Once loops make sense, programming becomes much easier. Let's get into it. Before actually getting into coding loops, let us understand what a loop is. A loop is a way for a program to repeat the same set of instructions multiple times. Instead of writing the same code again and again, we tell the computer how and when to repeat it. Now, let's take an example. Let's just imagine I want to print the name of my channel, MindX, 5 times. So, one way you can do is printf and MindX. And I add a new line character so that it goes into the next line for each loop. And then semicolon. Now, if I want to do this, print this, let's say 5 times, I can copy this and paste it 5 times. And then if I run it, first I run it, I should build it, and then run it. As you can see, MindX has got printed 5 times. Now imagine I want to do this 100 times. If I want to do this 100 times, copying and pasting is going to be extremely inefficient. The reason is it creates 3 big problems. First, your code becomes longer and than it really needs to be. And second, if you want to change something, you must fix it in many places. All those times you pasted, you have to go and fix it. And thirdly, mistakes multiply. So if you had a mistake in one area and you copy pasted that another 100 times, you are going to have 100 mistakes. So because of that, good programmers reduce repetition. Loops exist for exactly that reason. So instead of doing this, you can use a loop to actually print this 10 times. So now let's understand how we can do that. Now let's understand how the for loop actually works step by step. This loop prints the word MindX 5 times, just like the previous example. But the important question is, why exactly 5 times? A for loop has 3 parts, all written inside the parenthesis. First, we have initialization. Here we create a variable called I, or anything that you really want, and set it to 0. This variable is called the loop variable. Next, we have the condition. Before each repetition, C checks this condition. As long as the condition is true, the loop keeps running. The moment it becomes false, the loop stops and exits. Finally, we have the update. I++ increases the value of I by 1 after each loop. Now let's see this in action. As you can see here, I am using the for loop to print MindX 5 times, one beneath the other. Firstly, I is initialized to 0, and then the loop checks whether I is less than 5. 0 is less than 5, so it prints MindX, and then increments by 1. Then it again checks, I is 1 now, 1 is less than 5, so it's true, so print again. And again increment, making I 2. So this goes on until I becomes 5. When I is 5, I is equal to 5, so 5 is not less than 5, so the loop exits. And therefore, if we run this, you will see that MindX is printed just 5 times. So I build it and then run. As you can see, MindX has been printed 5 times. Now let's get into the next loop. Now let's look at another type of loop, the while loop. The idea is still repetition, but the way the loop is controlled is slightly different. This loop also prints the word MindX 5 times. But instead of putting everything in one line like the for loop, the while loop separates things more clearly. In a while loop, the condition is checked first. If the condition is true, the loop runs. If the condition is false, the loop does not run at all. Let's see what actually happens. First, I is set to 0. Then C checks the condition if is 0 less than 5. Yes, so the code inside the loop runs. MindX is printed. Then I is increased by 1 within this code itself. Now I becomes 1. Again C checks the condition. 1 is still less than 5, so the loop runs again. This continues for I equals 2, I equals 3 and I equals 4. When I becomes 5, the condition I less than 5 is no longer true. At that point, the loop stops. A for loop is usually used when you know how many times you want to repeat. A while loop is used when you only know the condition to keep going. For is for counting, while is for wait. Now let's look at the example in action. So I have typed the exact same code here. And now I'm going to build it and run it. As you can see, we again got the same result with MindX being printed 5 times. I hope you understood the while loop. Let's get into the next loop now. Let's look at the third type of loop in C, the do-while loop. At first glance, it looks very similar to the while loop, but there is one critical difference. This loop also prints the word MindX 5 times. But what makes the do-while loop special is when the condition is checked. In a do-while loop, the code inside the loop runs first. Only after the code runs does C check the condition. The condition is checked after the loop body. Now let's see this in action. So looking at the code here, I have typed the exact code over here, and you can see we have used a do-while loop to do the exact same function. Here, firstly, I initialize the variable I to 0, and then I use a do-while loop, and inside the loop you straight away print MindX and increment I by 1. So I becomes 1. And then lastly the loop checks the condition. Is I less than 5? 1 is less than 5, yes. So the loop continues and repeats again. So it comes back here and does this again. Prints MindX once more, and I is incremented by 1. And now I is 2. So it checks the condition lastly. 2 is still less than 5. So again the loop continues. So this continues until I becomes 5 over here on the 5th iteration. And then this condition is checked. 5 is not less than 5, and therefore the condition is false and the loop exits. So I hope you understood how the do-while loop works here. So we'll build this code and run it. As you can see, just as before, MindX has been printed 5 times. Now let us understand when to use each of these 3 loops. To choose when to use each of these loops, remember this simple rule. For loops are for counting, while loops are for waiting on a condition, and do-while loops guarantee at least one execution. With these 3 loops, you can handle almost all repetition in C. Loops might feel tricky at first, but once they click, programming becomes much easier. If this helped, like the video and subscribe for more C programming tutorials. See you in the next one.